A relaxing fishing game doesn't sound like something that should become a horror movie, but Dredge isn't exactly your average cozy game. That's exactly why it's getting a movie. If you're unfamiliar with Dredge, it's a single-player fishing adventure game with a sinister, Lovecraftian horror undercurrent. Players captain a small trawler exploring a remote archipelago to catch fish, dredge for treasures, and upgrade their vessel. The gameplay balances cozy fishing and inventory management by day with tense sanity surviving survival horror at night. By that, I mean the game will have you running from some of the most terrifying sea creatures ever, all building up to the final creature of the game, who's just straight up Cthulhu. Now that is something I would like to see in this live action movie, which brings me to the question of what will the Dredge movie look like? Now, Dredge doesn't really have a story or plot per se, it's more of a side quest simulator with hidden lore and two very insane endings to the game. The game opens with you crashing your boat at this archipelago, and the mayor of the local town, called Greater Marrow, has rescued you and had your boat fixed in return for you doing some work for him. You as the player itself is just a boat. You're not a person that walks around or actually does anything. The only time we see the driver of the boat is in the opening cutscene, where we see this guy with brown hair and a brown beard and a green beanie. And even that could almost certainly be ignored for the movie and be played by anyone with any type of personality because it plays no part in any of the story or the lore. What I would do is take an actor that looks somewhat like this guy and have him be one of two main characters, with the other character being his son, which could also be his daughter, but for the sake of the video, I'm just gonna stick with son. The boat driver, or fisherman if you will, has zero character motivations, as he's barely even a character in the game, which is a problem if you're trying to turn it into a movie. If you have the two main characters be a father and a son, that is instantly more enjoyable and entertaining to watch, and it gives the father a motivation for being in the story of the movie at all. I would have the father maybe be a little grumpy and very cautious and reluctant, whereas his son, preferably in his early 20s, would be very adventurous and have the desire to help people of the archipelago. The son would want to uncover the dark mystery of this entire place, but the father would just want to protect his son and try to leave as soon as possible. I would have the opening play out the same, except I would have the boat crashing be caused by a huge storm mixed with a sneak peek of one of the bigger sea monsters from the game, the Leviathan. When our two characters crash and then are saved by the town, I would have them meet the mayor and have the conversation be interesting in the sense that the mayor would be playing it off and being like, "Wow, these waters out here are sure crazy," when in fact he knows that it was a sea monster that crashed their boat. It'd be very interesting if the whole town is in on it, but not in a sinister way, but in a trying to cover it up and keep our dark secrets from outsiders type of way. The father would be reluctant to help the mayor with his request, but would accept it because he needs the money to put food on the table for him and his son, and the archipelago is the only place would work for them within 1,000,000 miles in the ocean. You could have this beginning section of the movie, Act 1 if you will, be the two of them doing some fishing, helping people at certain islands, while we occasionally get some exposition about how the wife/mother died, and the father was going to leave by himself just to sail the seas and not come back, but the son demanded he come with in order to keep him company and also for his own desires and interests. I think it would be a fun dynamic if the father is very good at fishing and dredging, but doesn't know anything about marine biology, but the son, maybe having studied that in college before dropping out, knows everything there is to know about marine life and how that works. That way they balance each other out, and the son doesn't seem like a useless secondary protagonist. About 1/3 of the way in, or Act 2, I would have something that kinda happens in the game, but I'm entirely rewriting it in my own way to make it make more sense. There's this character named the Collector who's a very quiet and mysterious person, and is searching for ancient relics lost at sea somewhere in the archipelago. You just kinda do stuff for him in the game because why not? A very interesting way to do that in the movie is to have the town of Greater Marrow seem very sinister towards the two main characters, especially the mayor. After they finish all the work for this town, the father would be like, "Okay, this entire area is very creepy, so we're just gonna leave now, but thanks for the money." And then the mayor in a threatening way would be like, "You can't leave," which would cause a misunderstanding because in reality, the mayor would not only be trying to save the life of the two characters by not letting them get killed by the Leviathan out there that crashed their boat, but then I would have an added twist on top of that where this town believes that going out into the ocean will wake the Cthulhu monster, which then will come back and kill basically everyone. So essentially the town would look like a bunch of lunatics. The father would think they're crazy and be like, "Okay, me and my son need to get the hell out of here before these crazy people do something to us." But during this entire commotion, I would have the son basically in the middle of the conflict where he doesn't think the town are completely out of their minds because he would actually notice a lack of boats and ships in the entire area. I would have this conflict end with some of the town's NPCs knocking the two of them out and just straight up sinking their boat and stranding them there. And that's when the two characters would wake up on a different boat belonging to none other than the Collector. I would have the Collector strike a deal with the father, offering him to keep the boat and use it to leave, but first he must help him find certain relics that he must dredge in dangerous areas of the archipelago. The father would once again be reluctant, but accept this offer as he doesn't trust the mayor and just just wants to leave. This is where you could really show off the other big islands in the game, as well as some of the smaller sea monsters around the map. As this part progresses, we would have the son be suspicious of the collector, thinking that he is going to do something terrible with these relics, to the point where the father would confront him about it. And that's when it would be revealed that the collector is using these ancient relics in order to resurrect his dead wife, which would completely change both how the father and the son would view the collector. Now here's how you could incorporate both endings of the game into the story of this movie. The father would be extremely sympathetic and would want to help the collector resurrect his wife, even if it meant something terrible might happen, but the son would feel the opposite. The son would want the collector to move on and not resurrect her, which is exactly how he feels about his father. He wants his father to move on from his wife's death, but he can't let go of her, as he internally wishes it was his wife being resurrected instead, which is why he would help the collector. In the actual game, it is revealed that the collector is not a real person, but a manifestation of the fisherman's guilt and split personality caused by the trauma of his wife's death. Now, you could do that in the movie, but you have to tweak some things I've previously said, such as not sinking their boat. My problem with the fisherman being the collector is how the hell would he even know how to do any of this stuff or where to go for it, and then you have kind of a big plot hole, whereas when you have the collector as an actual person, he'd be a mysterious side character, so I feel like you can kind of get away with not explaining everything. Not to mention that the Fight Club plot twist has been played out a million times since. During this entire thing, I would also have the reveal that the collector killed the mayor, which is why the two of them woke up in his boat, which of course would make the son hate the collector, as he is the character with the bigger moral code. And that's how you can make this go two different ways. You could play out the bad ending, where maybe the father quote unquote fights his own son and like ties rope around him to prevent him from intervening, and then he helps the collector resurrect his wife, which then awakes the deity, aka Cthulhu, who then presumably destroys the entire world. Or the good ending, where the son successfully convinces the father that he needs to move on and do the right thing, rather than do something that could potentially be extremely dangerous just for the chance of the collector's wife being resurrected. So then, just like in the good ending, I would have both the father and the son take the book from the collector's hands and throw it overboard, where then he would desperately dive in the water after it, getting eaten from the Leviathan from earlier in the movie. In the game, it's the fisherman that gets eaten by the Leviathan. Like I said earlier, you could still do that in the movie, where if the father is the collector, then the son throws the book and the father jumps in the ocean and dies. As much as I like a good world-ending finale, akin to something like Cabin in the Woods, the second ending is much more emotionally impactful and satisfying. You could even include a vision from the father where he imagines the bad ending, and that's what makes him not go through with it. The cool thing about this story is that it's extremely flexible, and there's like 4 variations of it you could do. You could have the father and the collector be the same person and have no son. You could have them be different people and no son. You could have the opposite. You could have them be the same character with the son, or not the same character with the son. Personally, I think it's more effective and entertaining to have the son be a character in the movie, as sometimes movies that only have one main character end up being very boring. If you have the movie just be the fisherman, not the son, you'd then have to introduce the collector much earlier in the movie in order to make the twist even more impactful and shocking. And that's basically it for my idea. Are there a ton of plot holes in this? Absolutely yes, which is why I'm not a screenwriter. But this was the problem when you have a game with no straightforward story. All I have to go off of is the ending and specific NPC's dialogue that the fisherman interacts with. And that being said, I want to thank you for watching. Feel free to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Goodbye.